4, 3, 2, 1.
You're listening to Racing World, brought to you by Perspective Group. It's your motorsport podcast show in conjunction with Race Control Magazine.
Well, welcome to another edition of Racing World. Didn't really think I was going to make a show, but when I walked past this and saw a Formula E car at Nissan Crossing in downtown Tokyo, I thought, we just got to do it. Apart from that, there's a lot of news going on at the moment. Not so much Formula One, we know all the stories that are going on there. IndyCar, there is just a massive amount of news and driver possible combinations for 2022 on the horizon. So I thought, well, we'll just bowl off a little show, and then I found this little beast there, so I thought, right, we're definitely doing a show. So there it is, the Nissan's Formula E car in its glory at Nissan Crossing in the Ginza district in downtown Tokyo. But now let's get into things in IndyCar. There is just so much news, so here it comes. Well, hi guys, moving back on now to the IndyCar part of the show in this Racing World special that I'm really doing about the silly season that's taking part in IndyCar, because it's just phenomenal what's happening right now, and I don't think I've seen it in all the years I've been covering IndyCar quite this aggressive, quite so early on. Just before we get to that, of course, 27 cars line up at Nashville for the first ever race at Nashville this weekend, and New Zealand track designer Tony Cotman responsible for the design of that track in his consulting company that's based out of Indianapolis. So all the very best to Tony and the team. I'm sure it'll be a classic design, and it's nice to see a Kiwi involved on that side of things. But moving back to the silly season, well, I don't really know where to start. There's just so much on the list, but we'll start at the top of the list that I have, and that's Carpenter Racing. So the big hot rumour there is that sometime within this month, Nico Hülkenberg from Formula One will test an Carpenter car, presumably at Barber Motorsport Park. Unknown, but let's just say that that's where it'll happen. It seems to be a favourite for people to go and test at, and it's a pretty good track for people to come accustomed to an IndyCar. And will that lead to something? Don't know. Hülkenberg has said that he's very keen to try it. So what would it mean, of course, to Ed Carpenter Racing? Obviously, Ed only does the ovals, so he'll be fine. And Rinus VeeKay should be fine. So does that change the combination whereby Hülkenberg comes in and does the road course events where Daly's done them in the past, or what happens there, who knows. But Nico Hülkenberg from Formula One certainly keen to become involved in IndyCar. Then moving on, there's the big one, the Andretti Autosport team. There's so much going on there. So the drivers in question, which I think is probably the best way to start, would be Ryan Hunter-Reay and James Hinchcliffe. Hunter-Reay certainly in a contract ending year. He said publicly yesterday, my time, so a couple of days ago by the time you've seen this, that he has some options for 2022. Didn't say whether they were with Andretti or with other teams. Let's assume that they're probably with other teams, I would say. James Hinchcliffe, yes, there's money there, but will that be enough to save Hinchcliffe? Teams not so happy with the performance factor, but you know, he's probably got a lifeline at this stage. However, here comes the twists. The rumoured person to be going to the number 28 DHL entry in place of Hunter-Reay could be Romain Grosjean. So there'll be a team switch for Grosjean, and he could end up there. Another rumour, and it's got a bit of weight behind it, is that Alex Albon from Formula One also, and now in DTM for Red Bull, could be interested in being in that team, and there's rumour of a test for him as well at Barber Motorsport Park. So we could see Alex Albon in IndyCar next year, but certainly Grosjean seems to be, I'd say, a pretty good bet to maybe take over the 28 car. And Hunter-Reay, well, if he's got some plans, I'd like to know where they are, because he's not really in my rumoured list of where he's going. But there could be seats at a few teams, which as we go through this list, we'll come across those. So then we move on to the next team in the equation. Michael Shank Racing, well, as we now know, Elio Castroneves signed for the whole season next year. Pretty good bet. Runs at Nashville this weekend for the team as well. So Elio's found a place. Obviously, it's a place that served him well after winning the 500 this year. So he's in full time. Shank themselves were saying, though, that they wanted to run two cars next year. Jack Harvey was always going to be the other driver there. He's now stepped out of the equation and said that he's looking elsewhere, and we'll get to him in a minute. But the rumours for the other car, or to go into that car, maybe Sato. Maybe Sato would come over from Rahal with the Honda money that Sato has and join the Shank Racing organisation. So that's a possibility. Now, seeing as we've been mentioning Sato, the hot tip there is, of course, that he's out from Rahal's. Jack Harvey's in. Maybe there'd be a third car as well, and that seems to have Santino Ferrucci earmarked for that one, so you could end up with a driver lineup of Graham Rahal, Jack Harvey and Ferrucci for the full season in 2022. Either way, there's plans afoot there, so we should see some team changes. Right, on to another powerhouse team now, Ganassi. So what do we know there? There's plenty going on there too. We know that Dixon's safe, Palau's safe, all the normal people are safe at the moment. There's no issues there at all. Jimmy Johnston, however, has said that he would very much like to drive in the 500 next year, but he was very, very quick to say, and the team were quick to say, that that's not at the expense of Tony Kanaan. So TK will be there as well. So that's 6 cars for Indy for the Ganassi team next year, if you subscribe to that, which I think you've got every reason to. So 6 cars for Ganassi next year at Indy. Then, of course, there is a rumour that Vassar Sullivan will be parting company with Dale Coyne in the satellite team that they run, and they may be interested in trying to do a deal with Chip. Now, you've got to remember there that Jimmy Vassar, a long-time driver for Chip, so there's a connection there. And the hot tip there, and I have this from a pretty good source, could be Zach Veach back in the equation. So you could actually end up with 7 cars at Ganassi at certain times next year. So that's one to watch. None of these things are confirmed, of course. It's all rumour mill, but boy, there's some good rumours. Then we move on to Penske, another one. So Simon Pagenaud in contract renewal year. It's been kept pretty quiet. Simon's played that pretty down. I think the captain would be hard pushed to find a replacement to Simon. He's a pretty all-round solid driver, so I'm picking that it's just a matter of time and that contract will be signed. Right, then of course a surprise announcement this week. Junkos Racing back in 2022 and back in 2021, teaming up with a former Formula 1 stakeholder in Brad Hollinger, so it'll be Junkos Hollinger Racing. They'll do the last 3 races in the 2021 season, which is Portland, Laguna and Long Beach, maybe rotating drivers through there as a bit of a driver evaluation program. They haven't said no to that, but they haven't said yes to it, but it's certainly in the equation because they're the ones that mentioned it. Full-time Chevy entry for 2022. So you've got to kind of wonder where that's going to lead, but that's an available seat for someone. Would it be Kyle Kaiser? He served them well at Indy a couple of times. Don't forget, he bumped Fernando Alonso out of the race just a few years ago for the 500. But Junkos Racing certainly full-time in 2022 and in for the last 3 in 2021. Then speaking of Penske earlier on, there's of course another sort of side issue with that. Scott McLaughlin announcing that he'd be available to drive for DJR at Bathurst, which would have all gone quite well had New South Wales not gone into lockdown, and then we ended up with a surprise change for Bathurst. So that may not play itself out now because McLaughlin may be involved in testing duties for the captain back in the US, which would not enable him to get down to run in the Bathurst 1000, and that's also assuming that New South Wales is cleared by that point in time to actually host the Bathurst 1000. So that's probably, I think, a 50-50 really, and it doesn't involve the main IndyCar equation. Other New Zealanders involved in driver re-signings. Mitch Evans re-signed for Jaguar this week, so he's locked in to a few more years at Jaguar Formula E team. Good to see Mitch there, and he said he's very happy to be staying there. And of course, the other day, as you would have seen, I saw the Nissan Dams car here in Tokyo. So it's actually a very impressive car when you see it in reality. It's one of those ones that looks better in reality than it does on telly, I have to say that. And I was quite taken by the beautiful work and carbon work on the car. So, but the big thing, of course, is this IndyCar thing. I've never ever seen so much driver movement at this time of the year. All of it has genuine merit to it. A couple of Formula 1 drivers keen, or ex-Formula 1 drivers keen to get into IndyCar. There's some drivers on the Road to IndyCar program that are keen to move up from Indy Lights and so on. So there's a big ripple effect there. It says a lot about where IndyCar is at the moment. And as I said, 27 cars at Nashville this weekend. We could see that permanently next year. And that again is saying more and more about what the series is about. NBC re-signed with the captain, so they're in with Penske Entertainment Group, so there's a solid television provider there. It just continues to bode just extremely well. No matter how you look at it, IndyCar is on the rise. It's a proven formula. The car works, the championship works, so well done to everyone involved in IndyCar, and let's see how this silly season plays out. So as I said, this was just a bit of a bonus show really today. I just felt that there was so much going on in IndyCar that it was too great to kind of ignore, and the fact that all of these driver movements all have multiple ripple effects. We could see all sorts of, equations play themselves out. And the young Kiwis, in the Road to Indy Series, all trying to up to the next stage of the ladder as well. With Hunter McElrea looking at an Indy Lights drive for next year, Billy Fraser and Peter Vodonovich looking for more as well in the lower parts of the Road to Indy Series. So we wish them all the best. And New Zealanders, if you have the chance to support any of those New Zealand drivers, this is our future talent. This is where it comes from. So I think it's great. But it's going to be an amazing season. Let's see how this last half of the season, or the last quarter of the season, really plays out. Dixon in the hunt for the championship, Palau there, Paddoa Award there. It's really anyone's race. I think Nashville this weekend will be a great turning point. As you can see, I've got the Tokyo Big Site behind me. This is where I've been working for the last month or so since I've been up here. Looking forward to leaving and going home on Tuesday. There's nothing against the Japanese people. It's just a nice time to go home, see the loved ones, see the wife who I've missed dearly, and be back home and bring you some more regular shows from regular places. But it's been great. Hope you've enjoyed this little update. Let's watch IndyCar with interest in 2022.